What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you for another round of picks here from every day we're covering. We're recording this on a American Day of Mourning because the legend, the one and only Hulk Hogan has passed away. Hulkamania is running wild upstairs now, but that's a little sad note. But on a good note, we're going to talk about some of those combat sports that the Hulkster was into.
Yeah, and then we maybe even have to, in the longer version here coming up later this week, have to dive deeper into that because both of us have his significant interest at one point in our life in the pro wrestling world. So yeah, that was tough news on the day, but I mean, I guess you remember the good times, right?
Yeah, yeah. Remember the good stuff. Yeah, definitely impacted a lot of people throughout this country for sure. Yeah, we'll have plenty to talk about that on the podcast coming up this weekend. But this is for getting you some picks here. SJ is going to give you some of his picks for a couple of fight cards coming up here this weekend. And we're going to start off in the boxing world because we've got some good fights with some titles on the line here. This is going to be taking place in New York on Saturday. And the title fight that's going on there at the top of the card is Xander Zayas and Jorge Garcia. There's a WBO junior middleweight title that's on the line between those two. We're also going to be talking about a couple other fights here on this card: Bruce Carrington and Mateus Haita, and Emiliano Vargas and Alexander Espinosa. SJ, this is a significant event, not only because there's some big fights here, but also because it's kind of marking an end of a media era here for boxing as well.
Yeah, I mean, depends on your perspective. I guess it could be a positive or a negative, but essentially, I guess what you would known as linear TV is no longer in the boxing game. So, HBO and Showtime kind of left that world, several years ago now. But in ESPN now, their contract with Top Rank, who is the promotion that's putting this card on, wasn't renewed. So this is the last show that will be on there, whether it be, ESPN, ESPN2 plus streaming, whatever the case may be, but that's no more. So, I mean, I suppose if we're going to get a lot more of this, like we mentioned in the past, the access and then maybe a little bit less of a price gouge, if you will. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. Nobody really does. So it's a little bit of kind of the sad on that end as well, at least from my perspective, because the more access the better in things like these, especially with a niche sport. So that we'll get that part aside when we get to the fights here. It's also kind of like a showcase, which I'm sure Top Rank will latch on with another distributor and get their fights out there. But these are the fights we're looking at here are three guys that are kind of on the come up, if you will, or guys that may be the future for that promotion. And we'll start with Zayas there and that junior middleweight. To me, it's just one of those. It's like he's got everything that you'd want. Got the game pretty much. He's got the personality. Even if you want to go on to the selling the looks type of thing, people kind of promote him out there with different products and brands and that type of thing. But to me, there's a little bit lacking with that first thing I mentioned, as far as like he doesn't do anything that's wowed you as of late. So I do expect him to fully get the win, but I'm going to go a decision on that one. And the book I was looking at, you're still getting basically almost even money at minus 125. So not a bad a risk, if you will, there for a pretty prohibitive favorite. Kind of the young guard, 21-0 there, going up against the veteran. It's a tale as old as time in combat sports. You get the young up and comer against the seasoned vet, and you kind of see what they're worth. So while he, like I said, I haven't been totally like wowed with him, this is a pretty good opportunity to kind of maybe take another step and get an impressive win here. Maybe you kind of move forward and take the leap until to the bigger names. We'll also go ahead and take a look at those fights you mentioned with Carrington and Vargas. Same deal with Carrington. He's looked a little bit more impressive. He's got 9 knockouts out of his 15 wins. But he's fighting a guy that, I mean, unless you're maybe a family member of his, or you're way deep in boxing where maybe you probably don't need to be in the weeds that deep. You probably never heard of him. So that's also kind of tricky. I will mention too, it's tough with these fights a lot of times. We want to get these out there and kind of see what we're thinking when I'm looking at, but at the same time, the lines aren't always, when it comes to props, it's not what you want, because in this fight in particular, Carrington's minus 4,000, so 40-1. Like, you ain't getting that doesn't get anything for you. That's, I mean, at least in the service I'm using at the current time, that's nothing to mess with. So I'm gonna go by decision, just for the fact that even though he is fighting a guy that's unknown and he does have 9 KOs of his own, The other guy has 14 of his wins are by knockout 9 times. So he's got power in his own right. So I think there may be a little bit that not risk taking is not going to be there on Carrington's side, which is probably the smart way to go. Not saying it's impossible, and just based upon the props that are available and that type of thing. If I could see a number and I knew like KO and decision were close to each other, I might take that KO side. But considering the only thing out there is the money line, I'm going to go ahead and I'll go decision and take Carrington to win it all, to win it that way. And then lastly, with Vargas, another same deal as the first one, just the young guy coming up against the older veteran, a 21-year-old in Vargas against the 34-year-old Espinoza. This is an 8-round fight. So, and then Vargas is also, I mean, you want to talk about a KO rate on the other guys. He's 12 of his 14 fights, he's won by knockout. So, and then considering a shorter fight, I expect him to come out pretty hot and try to make another statement. He's kind of been that guy where it's just like, I mean, I know he doesn't have the level of competition under his belt yet, but he'll put on a show regardless of who's across the ring. So I expect him to do that again. Again, no number on it, but I do like him by KO, and we'll kind of update here as the weekend goes on, and before the fights get going, we'll get you the particulars on kind of plus or minus money there, and you can make a little bit more informed decision. But that's the way we're looking right now, at least a couple days ahead of time.
All right, yeah, it looks sounds like some exciting stuff, and like you said, some young guys too that got a little spunk out there. It's gonna make this stuff interesting, whether it goes their way or not. Yeah, gonna throw some fireworks out there for you. The other thing that's going on, a big event for the UFC in Abu Dhabi. This will be on ABC, and you've got a few different fights here that you're taking a look at, SJ. And I guess we'll start off here with in the middleweight, Robert Whitaker and Rainier de Ritter. What are you looking at there?
Yeah, well, this is the story, like I said, it doesn't matter the combat sport. This is a similar tale here, but not as far as age, but maybe as far as like experience within the promotion. Whitaker's kind of been a stalwart, held the belt. It's been kind of one of those, I guess. I mean, a lot of times people think it's a bad term, but the gatekeeper gets thrown out a lot. But I mean, I don't think it's necessarily always a negative. It means that you're kind of a top 10 guy, I guess I'd term it. But you're just not quite, either you were or you have never got to that championship level, and that's behind you. So that's kind of where he sits. Now, de Ritter, on the other hand, he spent most of his time in one championship, an overseas promotion, mostly like in Asia and that part of the world. But he came to the UFC, and his first fight was November of 2024. So what are we looking at here? Less than a year ago, and he's already got 3 wins in the UFC under his belt, and against some pretty good competition. One of which was kind of the maybe the next big thing in the Penn State wrestler that came over to the UFC. He got a finish over him not long ago. So I kind of just like his momentum in this fight. I mean, and even outside the UFC, he's only lost twice to one opponent, and one of those was an injury throughout 25 plus fights of professional combat there. So I do like him to win. I'm just gonna go straight up though, because he's getting plus 140. It's nothing where I'd be shocked if Whitaker kind of just you came to life here and had maybe one last hurrah, maybe he's got one last charge at the belt there at middleweight. So it was not totally surprising, and the number would show you that. But I just think there's a little bit too much momentum there on de Ritter's side, and I think he can get it done.
All right, fun stuff there. Another middleweight fight you're going to be watching here on this card is Shira Monogmanev and Marc-Andre Barreau, and you've got an interesting matchup there. It looks like some guys that, again, maybe somebody that has a little bit of momentum, and one that maybe doesn't. You're talking about last 3 fights there with Barreau ending in a knockout and lost a couple of them. So that maybe shows you off a guy pretty quick.
Yeah, and then going in different directions. But the style of fight, at least like you mentioned, with a couple of the ones on the boxing side, should be fireworks as long as it lasts. I mean, talking about guys that land an average of 6 significant strikes per minute. So I mean, that's per minute, not per round, not per fight, per minute. So we should see some action. And I'm gonna go on Magomedov's side. He's got the knockouts at least in his last few fights. And on the other side, Barrialt's 3 of his last fights have ended in KO or knockout, or TKO or KO, excuse me. But 2 of those he's lost. So anytime you get knocked out, it's almost like becomes a trend. Or the easy thing is to say it's once you've been knocked out, it's easy. I don't know if it's necessarily easier, but it definitely appears to be more likely once it happens once. So we'll go Magomedov by finish. So I'll give myself a little bit of wiggle room there. So it could be submission or by strikes, but that's minus 150. So like I said, not a long stretch, but I'll probably end up parlaying these, and we'll get that more detailed when I get other picks out there for you. And then lastly, just to finish up, here we go on the women's side in the straw weight. Amanda Hebus, she's actually a slight favorite against Tabitha Ricci. I mean, this kind of tells you the thing here. Over 2.5 is minus 475, so it's expected to go the distance. And then looking specifically at Ricci's fights, all last 5 of her fights, every single one is a decision. You know, whether she won or lost, it was the decision. So she's kind of like that type of fighter where no matter who the opponent is, she's gonna kind of make it a point fight and not necessarily maybe take too many risks, or she's good at defending. People that are going for the finish. So you got to give her credit on that side too. But I will go with the favorite in Hebus, and I'm gonna same thing. I'm gonna go and double up here. I'll go with the prop of Hebus to win by knockout or decision. So give you a little bit of wiggle room there. Just I like her by finish, but the fact that Ricci doesn't really get finished and that over is kind of making me a little bit leery to really go on
Mhm.
the finish side. So that's still minus 140 though. So not a bad prop there. But like I said, we'll get the more detailed. We'll get this, get these picks out here ASAP, but then also follow up there, late Friday night or early Saturday with maybe some parlay action between these picks.
Well, and definitely with a fight like that, I mean, you're talking about those kind of odds numbers on an over. I mean, if you're feeling spicy on sprinkling something that's going to get you a good return, maybe do go with that finish early on.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's even another women's boxing match where it's like like I said, Clarissa Shields, who's kind of been dominant in her own right. That's a huge favorite. And it's just like one of those things where eventually they're bound to lose. Everybody's unbeatable until they get beat. So it's one of those fun things. You throw a couple bucks here or there on it, and eventually you're bound to get it. And if not, you're only out a few bucks. So maybe those are type of things to look at too when you have maybe a little bit not as much notoriety on these fights, but you have a little fun with them still.
Yeah, good stuff to keep you interested. All right, SJ, we appreciate your insight on these fights, and hopefully, folks have some fun with it and have some good luck with it here this weekend. Both going on Saturday. They're both in the boxing and the MMA world. Again, SJ will throw out more of those details for you as well. So make sure you're following us on Twitter at SJM Bets at Cherokee CP. You see the handles right there on the screen. So follow us there. He puts out those graphics for you when he's making those picks too, so you know what you're looking at that day of. And of course, you can always, we'd love it if you'd like, subscribe and get the notifications here on this YouTube channel, so you're always getting these picks. And of course, we're going to be ramping up into college football before we know it, with lots of that as well. And then also, of course, the podcast. Every day we're covering, available on all the major podcast platforms. We'd love it if you would like and share wherever you may listen to your pods as well. That's SG Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week here of some picks on Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.